Now, this here is a website that is supposedly showing people all the thousands of satellites and the thousands of pieces of debris they say are floating in outer space. Now, this is ridiculous. This is why if you believe this, then you are the definition of artificial intelligence. You see, this is an animation, and this is how they always got to show you this garbage, literally. And they say that, go on now, play, that this stuff is floating in outer space. Look at that. So they teach that there's 4, 5, 6, 7, 8,000 satellites floating over the Earth, which is what they call orbit. And there's thousands of decommissioned satellites and debris floating around. And they're going to use this garbage for an excuse so that they'll say they can no longer blast a rocket off the Earth into outer space because of all this debris, which they say is traveling at 17,500 miles an hour. Okay, this stuff would be traveling 10 times faster than a mediocre bullet, which travels at 1,000 miles an hour. Okay, I don't know why people get mad when I say per hour and they say feet per second. I do an hour, okay, because I feel like it. All right, so excuse me, this is garbage 100%. This is not occurring. The Earth does not curve like that. It's funny that the high priest of the heliocentric model, Neil deGrasse Tyson, says that even at 60 plus miles in altitude that you cannot see this curve. What you do see is a straight horizontal horizon. You see this straighter than this line at the bottom, red line indicating how far I've got into this video. Okay, red into the white line. That's what the horizon looks like. It's why it's horizontal. It's level. All right. So he will even say it's flat. Okay, 67 miles in altitude or 60 plus miles. But at the same time, liars like Bill Nye, the science guy, who is a blatant liar, one of his number one proofs that the Earth is a globe is he shows a ship sailing away at 1 or 2 miles towards the horizon, and the hull or the bottom of the boat will sink in an even level manner straight down like an elevator. You would expect to see the front of the boat to tip down or go down and the back of the boat to tip up, indicating it was going over a curve, which is what you would see. The front would go down and the back would go up when something is inclined. Okay, but we don't see that, and they have their little excuses. They have a bag of excuses that must weigh thousands of tons because they got an excuse for everything we don't see, for everything we don't feel. There's an excuse for it. They run to Wikipedia and plagiarize it and come back and regurgitate it. And they think they're smart. All you're doing is memorizing things. All right. Now, none of these satellites will show you a rocket blasting off from the Earth. So from their perspective of the infinite vacuum universe, outer space, not one of these satellites that they claim are floating around the Earth, or more technically falling around the Earth, not one of them has ever been commissioned to watch a rocket blast off and go to outer space and then follow this rocket to see what it does. They only show the back of the booster, a red-hot booster camera fixed to the rear fuselage of a rocket, and people love it. You understand? It's ridiculous that the people are suffering mass hypnosis of this garbage. What they show from Earth is a rocket blast off, and this is what it does. It goes straight up for about 10,000 feet, and then it veers off and does a real heavy arc, does that, and flies back down again, always over the ocean, so forgive me. It blasts off the state of Florida, blasts off, goes up, and then it does this. and it flies out of view back down into the water, right over the Bermuda Triangle. We never see a rocket do what we were taught is the fastest way between 2 points, which is going a straight line up. They make up things like escape velocity to say that that's the only way you can escape the Earth. It's a closed system, but the rocket can escape. It's a closed system, but asteroids and meteorites can come in, and we call them shooting stars. It's all nonsense. Now, again, if all this stuff was floating around above the Earth, we would see thousands of black dots traverse the moon. Okay? I look at the moon all the time with my telescope, and it's beautiful. I have a 2x Barlow lens, which I want to get a 3, but I can see perfectly on the moon. And if all this stuff was orbiting the Earth, when the moon came into view, all this stuff would be like little black dots in front of the moon. We never see that. So they go plagiarize Wikipedia, and Wikipedia says they're too small. Okay, now they do their freeze frames of the ISS passing the moon. And if you took that and broke that ISS up into 100 little pieces, you would still be able to see each little piece, no matter how far you separated them. Do you understand what I mean by that? The ISS, a freeze frame in front of the moon, and you could break that up into 200 little pieces, and you'd still be able to see these black little dot pieces. They say all this garbage is traveling at 17,500 miles an hour, which is 10 times faster than a mediocre bullet, which travels at 1,000 miles an hour. And this is all indoctrination. Okay, if the Earth was really doing this, curving, and people could walk around upside down, and some force or occurrence called gravity was pulling, holding, or curving all matter back to the center of the Earth, they wouldn't say, however, if we are to be honest, we do not know what gravity is in any fundamental way. If you Google, what don't we know about gravity, the number one hit is, however, if we are to be honest, we do not know what gravity is in any fundamental way. Now that is illogical and absurd to then ascribe trillions of things that this force or occurrence is doing. Holding every blade of grass, every particle of dirt, every grain of sand, person, place, and thing, and trillions of gallons of water in the Atlantic and Pacific Ocean, but they don't know what it is in any fundamental way. It is because they cannot directly detect any presence or substance of gravity itself on the Earth. They've never done it, and they never will, because it doesn't exist. A person, place, thing would require presence and substance to be real. Do you understand that? There are known ways of propagation through current, field, wave, beam, ray, or particle, and they cannot directly detect anything that they could say is gravity itself. That's why they say they don't know what gravity is in any fundamental way. That is illogical. Okay? Gravity would have to have presence and substance to interact, engage, or engulf all matter on the Earth, every blade of grass, particle of dirt, grain of sand, person, place, and thing, to keep it on the Earth, which they say is spinning faster than a bullet at the equator, 1,038 miles an hour. And this atmosphere is somehow attached to the Earth. Right? They say gravity is pulling these 4 layers of atmosphere back to the Earth, but when we see gas escape, it disperses in all directions. It does not exhibit a downward vector at 9.8 meters a second. It does not. Steam escaping a tea kettle goes up, and it goes in all directions. So gravity's pulling all this down, but in the middle, air can go 10 miles an hour this way, and 1,000 feet higher, it's going 20 miles an hour that way. But all this up here is attached to the ground of the Earth and relative to the Earth, spinning 1,000 miles an hour. That is ignorant. Okay? And they say that gas becomes a barrier because they say all this black is an infinite vacuum universe. And the laws of thermodynamics, second law of thermodynamics, entropy, and Boyle's gas law and Avogadro's gas law says that gas, when in contact with a vacuum, will fill the vacuum instantaneously. The only way the two, gas and oxygen, can exist with a vacuum anywhere near its vicinity is if there's a barrier in the way. You understand? They're saying that all this black region is an infinite expanding vacuum universe, 1,000,000 light years across. And 1 light year, they say, is almost 6 trillion miles. And emphasize the astronomical number of even 1 trillion. 1 trillion seconds to go by starting right now would take over 30,000 years for 1 trillion seconds to go by. So 1 light year is almost 6 trillion miles. And that's how big they say this infinite vacuum universe is. Thousands or millions of light years across. You know what I'm saying? The width, the length, the height. And the Earth can somehow maintain its gas, oxygen, and water vapor in the clouds with no problem. It doesn't fill the vacuum of space because of some force or occurrence on the Earth that they admit they do not know what it is in any fundamental way because they have never directly detected gravity itself. No presence in substance, not 1 iota, not 1 smithereen, okay, of gravity itself. But they assign it to 1,000,000 different things every second, holding down every blade of grass, grain of sand, particle of dirt, every person, place, and thing. And you people can't see how illogical that is? If outer space were an infinite vacuum universe that is expanding, they always show it expanding or inflation in one direction. Singularity explodes, and it goes that way. An explosion goes in all directions, okay? But anyway, if this was an infinite vacuum, it would suck all the gas and oxygen off the Earth. The Earth would not. It would suck the water too. That would all go in outer space. Okay, per any reasonable scale, the Earth would be smaller than a grain of sand in an infinite vacuum universe. Okay, and gas, when not contained, disperses in all directions at high velocity. Okay, it does not exhibit any downward vector of 9.8 meters a second squared. It goes up, and it goes that way and that way. These people are liars. They tell us 14.7 psi is pushing down on us, but we can't feel it because our bodies somehow produce enough opposite pressure to equalize or cancel it out. That is ridiculous. Okay, I can take a weight scale outside, put it on the ground, and that will always stay on 0 because there's nothing pushing down on it. I could then put a 1 pound weight on it and it will register 1 pound. But why isn't this 60, 70, 80 mile column of air that's over everything, why isn't it pushing down on the weight scale to register a weight? Because nothing's pressing down on it. Air goes in all directions. When you stand outside, you can feel it go by your face at 5 miles an hour because it's going this way, it's going left, right, up, down, and sideways at all times. It's not just coming straight down at you. Okay, that's what they want you to believe, that gas and oxygen being pulled back down to the center of the earth can somehow be a barrier, okay, that protects all the air and oxygen and gas, even of itself, from an infinite vacuum. That's a lie. You don't need an IQ over 99 to realize this. We are lied to in a manner so great that they can say whatever they want now, and people are forced, without even realizing it, to believe and defend it. We would see all of this. They say 10,000 satellites orbiting Earth, some active, some decommissioned, along with thousands of pieces of debris, and you will never see anything go past the moon. Okay? Because the moon highlights anything in front of it. Okay? You got the moon, you got the earth, and all this junk in between. You would see it. You would see black dots. You know how this would be? It would all be together and you'd see it all going by the moon. And we don't see it. They're liars. It's just terrible. If you can't see curvature at 60 miles in altitude, it doesn't exist. They have to say it's flat locally because it is. We don't see this unless they show a fisheye lens of it going concave, convex, then straight. That's a fisheye lens. You people need to wake up and start employing independent logic. You have surrendered all of these. It has been systematically dumbed out of you because you have been trained to instantaneously believe everything they say. And most of them aren't lying. They're only teaching you what they were taught to instantaneously believe by people they trusted. When you put it to the test, the heliocentric model is bunk.